We are calling the meeting to order at 7:05 Mountain. One moment for the agenda to be pulled up. And while I'm doing that, if the secretary could please take the roll. And you're muted, Ms. Arrowwood, in case you don't know.
Arrowwood, present. Bracco,
Present.
Szelski,
Present.
Harlos,
Present.
Latham,
Here.
thanks. Martin,
Present.
Moulton,
Present.
Rowlett,
Here.
Rufo, Seebeck.
Here.
Right. I'll call the alternates. Tommaso, Roberson,
Present.
Deal, Roots, Logan,
Here.
Rogers.
I am also here.
All right, and I'm gonna call member Rufo again. He is often a tad late. Madam Chair, at this time, we have 9 present with Rufo not reporting as yet.
Thank you. And I have to know, do you live with a bear? Or like, what is that noise? It sounds like a wild animal.
It's probably my pug.
Oh, yeah, does he have breathing problems?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, pugs are adorable. All right, so now our attendance of guests tends to dwindle as we're getting towards the end. I think there was only Mr. Silver here, but if there's anything, Mr. Silver or Mr. Jacob, sorry, I forgot about you. I'm so sorry. So it's opportunity for public comment. So it'll be for the guests or members that have something to say that really doesn't neatly fit into the agenda. Raise your hand, please. Mr. Seebeck.
Well, I know it's not totally germane to this committee, but it's kind of an adjunct. Would you and JJ run over what happened with the platform meeting Tuesday and what you guys arrived at on the parliamentary question?
Oh, I did send it to the list.
Yeah, but I don't think people that are on this committee who are not on that one haven't heard what's going on.
I don't really want to spend time on this committee on that. We've got a lot to do, if that's okay, because that was a parliamentary situation that raised over there. Would have to explain the whole thing. Before you know it, we're 20 minutes in.
Okay.
I don't want to say we. I just got tangled in my own feet, and I have a feeling you did as well, because sometimes knowing more than the average bearer can make things more complicated. And I don't mean you as in you. I'm taking that on myself than they needed to be. So at the platform committee, though, probably a good opportunity, and that will get posted on our historical channel on YouTube, that if anyone wants to take a look at it. I didn't get to post the link here in the minutes, but Sylvia did send over a draft of the minutes. We can postpone that till next time if everyone hasn't had a chance to review them. It's up to you guys. So I'm going to ask, is there any corrections to the minutes or objections to approving them at this meeting?
I just object since I haven't had a chance, and I'd like that opportunity to review them.
Okay, we'll do them the next meeting. Remember, next meeting will not be next week because there is a tellers meeting that day. Why did this not link? There, it links. Sometimes you just have to hit a hard return on Google. Okay, these are more for references, and Dr. Moulton did have some corrections to the yellow line report, which I made before the meeting started. So what we're on now is the survey and the potential removal or removal entirely, removal to entirely is not the right word, removal to red line, removal to yellow line, whatever, of the affiliate dispute procedure. We had a lot of discussion last time. Most of it was off the record in our little chat time afterwards of that. I don't know if we wish to discuss the entire survey first or go right to that item. My preference is we go right to that item because I think between email and last meeting, which Mr. Roulette was not here, and I want to give him ample floor time because he has a potential amendment. So I want to give him ample time to defend keeping it in the main report. So if there's no motion otherwise, we're going to go right to reconsideration of the affiliate dispute procedure proposal. So I am going to pull that up actually in the draft report, if I can get that link to work. And that was, if we remember what number, 6. So let's go down to 6. Oh, skip right past it. And my mouse is not working well today. Okay, Mr. Roulette, I know you had some changes where things get a bit difficult, and I'm gonna kind of leave it to the committee on this as well, we're in so I guess the first motion that needs to be made, and I was going to make it, is whether or not we're going to reconsider it at all. If we're not, things are just going to stay the way they are. If we do reconsider it, then you can make those changes you requested, because it will be like us considering it afresh. You can make those changes, and the final motion can be somebody, you know, moving to adopt or not adopt it with those changes, to put it elsewhere, to fail it entirely. All of that will be on the table if we reconsider it. So I am moving to reconsider what is now called Proposal 6, which was previously labeled EE. I do have reconsideration rights as I voted for it at the time or abstained. I know I didn't vote no, so I was not on the losing side. Is there any objection to reconsidering this proposal? Okay, hearing none, we are reconsidering it afresh. Mr. Roulette, you have the floor.
Okay, are we gonna do amendments to it first, or should we talk about yellow lining it first?
Well, I think it should be what you think or what the committee thinks is the best version, so I would suggest amendments.
All right, in that case, I have 3 separate amendments for it. And most of the amendments, in fact, all of them, are designed to make the proposal more palatable. If I'm reading the survey results right, we had about 44% of the people say they would vote for it, and 56% say they would vote against it. And so I would like it to be more palatable to them. One of the main things that I think was the reason that people voted against it was because they basically misunderstood the purpose and the effect of it. And so I have written a different rationale, which puts it in different, extremely different language. The rationale that I've proposed is it's not neutral. It comes at it from a very partisan standpoint, and it uses language that some of the people in the survey used as well. Like it does not read like any of the other rationales, and I can understand why someone would object to the new rationale. However, it I think it's an improvement on the old rationale, and it gets more at the real problem that this proposal is trying to solve. Did you guys, I guess this is what I'll move that we change out the old rationale to the new rationale. And I'm curious, everybody got the email, right? It only went out
Well-
like a couple hours ago.
I'm going to read it. There is a little bit of an issue here where the rationales subcommittee was the one working on the rationales, but because this is such a touchy proposal and you are going to be the one presenting it, if it stays in the report, I'm going to allow amendments to the rationales, even though we really weren't going to do that till we pass the report, because I do think that makes a difference in our reconsideration. So I'd like to, I'll put it on the screen, but I want to read it aloud. And I do see your hand, Dr. Moulton, who I'll call on next. The rationale that Mr. Roulette proposed are there are several problems with how we deal with leadership disputes within state affiliates. The main one being that the LNC becomes too involved in the internal business of its affiliates. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to have a huge problem with that. Just letting you know, but we're reading it out loud. This proposal aims to define and thus strictly limit what the LNC can and cannot do when two or more groups both claim to be the legitimate state party. The bylaws are currently silent on this issue. That's not a true statement or objectively true. Some people think they are, some people think they aren't. It's not the job of the committee to make that decision. I'm sorry, I shouldn't do commentary. Slap me. And that has several negative effects. Each time a dispute happens, the LNC has to shoot from the hip, deciding what its own powers are and how it's going to execute them. That encourages the bad behavior, both on the part of an LNC and on the part of anyone considering shenanigans. This addition to the bylaws makes clear that the only job of the LNC is to discover, not decide, which group has a legitimate claim to be recognized by the national party. After that, the national party cannot interfere further because of Article 5, Section 5, which reads, the autonomy of the affiliate and sub-affiliate parties shall not be abridged by the national committee or any other committee of the party except as provided by these bylaws. I am going to stick that on the screen. I'm trying to find the raise hand function, but I'm going to say one thing. If we start really getting into the weeds on these rationales, I am going to commit it back to the rationales committee with your input and ask the rationales committee for your input, because we're not going to spend 2 hours amending rationales at this meeting. But we'll see what maybe we can agree upon. And I'm going to let the debate go forward. I can tell you that I'm thinking about it, that I'm tempted to rule some of this language potentially out of order. We can't be denigrating people in our rationales. And there's several groups of people here, not just the LNC. But to have a committee that's entirely appointed by the LNC, throw the LNC under the bus, no bueno. Dr. Moulton.
Thank you. I have lots of problems with this rationale amendment. I served on the rationales committee. The main reason I asked to be put on the rationales committee was to prevent something like this from happening. I have seen in the past situations where a bylaws committee will put out a rationale that puts things in there that either just aren't true or gaslight or just run over the other side. And this is like a textbook example of that. The example I use to illustrate that is when Trump would say, we're going to build a wall and Mexico is going to pay for it. And what he was trying to do there is he was trying to have everyone talk about that Mexico is going to pay for that thing and ignore the we're going to build a wall thing. And that's kind of what rationales like this do, that they state something that's not quite true and put forth it as if it is true. And then there's a problem when we make some statement about how the bylaws ought to be interpreted, like right now. And then if the proposal doesn't pass, that kind of puts the thumb on the scale. So I agree with everything the chair said before about the problems with this rationale. The rationales committee carefully considered this. We used a lot of the chair's proposed rationale when we modified a little bit, expanded it a little bit, and perhaps it should be expanded further. But I don't think this here is the right approach. What you want with the rationale is you want something that either side would look at it and basically agree with it. So it wouldn't no matter if you want to pass it or not, you should look at the rationale and say, well, that makes sense. That's not untruthful. And I don't think you can say that for this. I think both sides would have a problem with this particular rationale. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And it does look like this is probably, if we pass this out, is going to get referred back to Rationales Committee, perhaps for the reconsideration with your input, Mr. Rolat. But Dr. Moulton, the rationales need to be something that people who are both in favor and not in favor of a proposal can generally agree with. But also, I mean, dude, you're throwing me under the bus personally with this rationale. I do not think this LNC, in an action that I support, has become too involved. Now, you might think we've become too involved, and that's okay. But like, it's pretty poor form to basically have a rationale that I'm like border no. And you're basically saying the LNC is engaged in bad behavior the day before an LNC election from the dais on a committee appointed by the LNC. Like, that's just super, super bad form and putting the thumb on the scale. This needs to be neutral language. And also, while I do think perhaps other sides have committed shenanigans, they don't think they're committing shenanigans. So I'm even defending the group with an opposite point of view for me, to recognize that there can be good faith actors on both sides of such an issue. And I think your last sentence is objectively wrong. There are other things the LNC can do, because everyone wants to put a period after or any other committee of the party, period, and forget except as provided by these bylaws. And I know Dr. Moulton disagrees, which is good that we have people that are on both sides of this interpretive issue here. Alicia Matson did a really good job of showing all kinds of other ways that the bylaws do provide I don't want to call it interference, but involvement. So, but let me tell you one language I really do like on here, because I feel like we're beating up on you a little bit. I don't like the way it's worded in this sentence, but I do like the phrase "discover, not decide." I think that's an excellent phrase to put in there. But I absolutely disagree that this isn't already covered by our bylaws. I think what we can all agree, it's not explicitly covered, and not explicitly can be, you think it's not covered at all, or you can be like me, where I think you got to do like Alicia Matson did in the McVeigh versus LNC decision. Mr. Bracco and then Mr. Roulette, and I'm getting back in line after Mr. Roulette, unless other people wish to speak.
Yeah, I don't want to take up too much time. I think it's very thumb on the scale, and that, I mean, I think other people have talked about this enough. I agree with the discover, not decide. I think that could fit somewhere in the second sentence of the existing rationale, and that would make it better. And I think maybe we should look at that instead of the big thing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bracco. Mr. Rolette, I'm sorry if you feel like we beat up on you a little bit. Not my
Oh, it's
intent.
fine. No, those who put forward proposals are volunteering to get beat up a little bit. That's fine. I'll say that I'm not, in writing this rationale, I was not thinking of any particular LNC. This is, I tried to make it an LNC, not the LNC, where I wrote that. Yeah, I can see what you're saying about the thumb on the scale and how it probably ought to be coming from a more neutral perspective. The tone of this rationale, I wanted it to be. I'm fine with referring this to. I'm fine with referring this back to the rationales committee. But one thing that I do want to keep is that I want people to whose gut response to this is, okay, this proposal is trying to get the LNC more involved in a state affiliate dispute. I don't want them to. That's got to be addressed in the rationale, because that is what people's gut reaction to it is, and that's not at all the intention of the proposal or the effect of it, I think.
Okay, then I think there's probably not going to be an objection of us referring this to the rationales committee, maybe to take a second look at it with input from you. I really do like the discover, not decide language. I mean, a lot. And perhaps something more neutral can be worded that makes it clear that not having this isn't going to make situations about which some people have been unhappy, because you're correct, it's not just any current controversy. There were several last term. We had Delaware, we had Massachusetts. That not passing this is not making those go away, because we don't have it now. And in 2.5 years, whatever, 3 years, we've had, actually it's been 4. There's been Idaho. Was it Idaho? It was Idaho, right? Anyway, there was another state that there was an issue. So I think maybe putting it in there that not having this doesn't take anything away. It clearly defines everyone's rights and responsibilities, might be. So I'm going to ask, is there any, if this ends up in yellow or in the main report, is there any objection to having the rationales committee take another look at the rationale and revising it potentially with input from Mr. Rolette? Dr. Moulton.
I guess I'm wondering, did the yellow proposals need rationales? Because they're not going to be in our printed report. So a rationale would need to be presented by the presenter, which would, I guess, normally be you, and this proposal might be Mr. Rolette. I'm less concerned about what the presenter says than what is in writing in front of people in permanent form. So in my opinion, at least, I don't think we need committee rationales for the yellow stuff. I mean, we can make them, but I don't think we need to wordsmith them as much, because really more discretion is in the presenter, is my understanding. I guess, could the chair clarify that?
Certainly. I think you're both. I think you're correct, but I've got everything before the but is bullshit, right? I think you're correct, and just like we've seen here, what some of the things we've objected to, even though, be it myself as presenter, yourself, if Mr. Rolette ends up presenting, there's always going to be a little bit of ad-libbing. I think the general tenor of how something gets presented needs to be approved by the committee. And even though the rationales are more for the printed report, I do think they provide Nozikian side constraints on where the presenter can go. Like if I got up there and just like completely went into Lululand and started blasting people in the party and some of the rationales that's completely different. It's not the tenor or thrust that we put in our report. I think you guys would have every single right to be extraordinarily angry with me. So I actually do think the yellow ones, in case I need to present them, need to have something that the committee's comfortable with as the general mood. Did that make sense?
Sure.
So this then, since there was no objection, I want to lower my hand here. I know it's obnoxious to have that. This will get referred back to the Rationales Committee, who will get in touch with you, Mr. Roulette. What I would suggest is that the Rationale Committee first, amongst themselves, take a look at how they might change it. Again, this is only if it gets referred to yellow or stays in the report. And then bring that to Mr. Roulette for his input and maybe some more potential, tightening. And it's perfectly fine if you guys are like, no, I like it the way it is, because at the end, if it stays in the report, we're going to have to pass it when we do the final pass through the report. So let's get to the actual proposal. You have the floor again, Mr. Roulette, because you had some changes to the actual wording of the proposal.
Yes, I've got two basic changes. The first one is the more controversial one. In the first sentence, I propose that we strike the words 10 or 10% and replace with 20%.
Just give me 1 second, please. Just simple 20%.
Yep. And keep the word least.
I'm sorry about that. Let me highlight this. And you could go ahead and speak to it while I'm trying to fix this.
Okay. This is the main objection to this proposal on the surveys, other than the fact that they think that the LNC is getting too involved in affiliate stuff, was that the trigger for the LNC to get involved was way too low. Now, practically speaking, the LNC is involved no matter what it does or does not do. However, this trigger here of either 10 or 10%, or in this case 20%, basically says that whatever the LNC has done, or whoever the LNC has recognized, they have made some kind of error. That's one way of interpreting this, because if there is no petition, then whatever's going on continues to go on. All right. So I don't think that the trigger point matters a whole ton. But other people seem to freak out about it. And so I'm fine bumping it up to 20%. That's still something that's quite achievable by somebody who wants to do this, by somebody who would like to have this process go forward. And yeah, it puts it within the realm of possibility for having it be done, and it's not so low that people object to it. Also, just the number 10, people thought that was way too low. 10%, 20%. 20% seems reasonable. Other people wanted like 33%. I think that's going too far. But yeah, I can see it.
Thank you, Mr. Roulette. I'm going to raise my hand on this one if I could figure out how to do it. Well, I don't need to do it now because nobody else had their hand raised. The objection I have kind of is an objection even to the original language, I suppose, once I say it. Here's part of the problem. Is the LNC has other obligations other than whether this passes or not. And one of them is, whatever feelings anyone has on this, it is a current obligation, is to ensure that we protect our trademark, because it says that only those groups or those authorized by the LNC shall use the Libertarian part. It doesn't say the word trademark, but that is obviously what it's describing. So we have an obligation to protect that. Those of you not familiar with the law, let's say 20% doesn't, and there's two groups that for years and years goes on both claiming to be the Libertarian Party. A, that risks our ballot access, which the LNC also has an obligation to protect. But B, it can raise an affirmative defense in a future case that everyone agrees we should be pursuing, kind of like the Trumpertarians in Virginia with the Tidewater Libertarian Party that were endorsing Republicans and the like. We may not be able to do a thing about it because of an affirmative defense of failure to enforce. The LNC, as long as it has that trademark, has a fiduciary duty to enforce it. If you make this 20%, take a state like California or Texas, where that number becomes really high, the LNC is over a barrel, could be. So this is even an objection against that 10 or 10%, which I don't think I had when I in our various amendments, because I think we're coming into a conflict of duties here. The LNC has a duty to ensure there is only one affiliate party in each state, and also has a duty to protect its trademark. So I've kind of like, I've kind of talked myself into being against the petition to begin with, which I know would probably torpedo the proposal, but just as an LNC member, I see a huge conflict here with competing duties, and making it higher is definitely not something I can support. I already have misgivings about the lower number. Anyone further? Mr. Roulette.
Sure. I don't think so. Having it as 10 or 10% puts the petition process on basically a hair trigger. And that's fine. Like, again, I don't see a problem with that, but people really objected to it. 20% of the sustaining members in California, that would take work, but you could do it. Like, people have done that. Like it's 10%, or it would be 20% of the sustaining members in California. You could put together a campaign, and have this petition done. I don't think that 20% is too much of an ask, and it would make the proposal really I think a lot more palatable to people. Anyway, that's it.
I would just like to ask you the question, though, Mr. Roulette, if Mr. Bracco would indulge me. What if it doesn't happen and you have two groups in California, both claiming to be the Libertarian Party, and we then just absolutely prejudice our trademark rights? What the LNC will have to do is completely, in order to fulfill its duty, the LNC will have no choice but to disaffiliate the state, because it can't risk losing its identity. Forget about it being two allegedly warring groups of libertarians. If we start to get any kind of real political traction, I mean, I like to point to Texas for this one. The Republican Party in Texas is always trying to screw with the LP and throw them off the ballot to sue and all of this. All they would need to do is set up a rival group. And if you don't get enough people who are that interested in it, a lot of people throw up their hands. They don't want to sign a petition. They don't want the LNC to be involved, not even understanding the seriousness of the issue. You are going to force disaffiliation in that point. And the idea is, I think, to steer away from the nuclear option as much as possible. And I think this inadvertently, with a higher number, can definitely steer more towards the nuclear option. Because if our ballot access is going to be fucked to begin with, we might as well, screwed to begin with, we might as well protect the trademark and not lose both of them. Mr. Bracco.
So I guess this might be parliamentary inquiry, but at the beginning of this proposal says, in the event of dispute within the membership of an affiliate, which in this context means state level,
Yes.
right? As to the proper identity of its chair, right? So this is a very specific circumstance to which this applies. While there have certainly been some disputes that fall into that category, not all of them have, and I think the one that you specifically referenced with the Tidewater Libertarians, that is not that, like, that doesn't fall into this category. So in that particular circumstance, just because it was brought up, would you view, if this were to have passed, that somehow the LNC's hands would have been tied
No,
to act unilaterally?
you misunderstood my point. No, what I had said, why I used that example, it wasn't because this provision would apply. But say we had a situation in which 20% was not gained, and there was a dispute in the Libertarian Party of Utopia, that went on 5 or 6 years. We would be prejudiced against asserting trademark against anybody because we will have failed to enforce it when our bylaws say there can be only one group, and obviously only one of them or none of them are legitimate. Failure to enforce is a really big deal in trademark law. So I'm not saying this provision would have been triggered in Tidewater, but I am saying this provision can tie our hands in a situation triggered by this, in which we could risk negative impacts to defend us against some fake, Republicans or fake libertarians, Democrats or Republicans posing as libertarians and taking over a county affiliate or even a state affiliate. Mr. Roulette.
I guess the last thing I'll say on this one is that what's going on with the trademark and in Michigan is like one thing that's going on, as opposed to the several, many disputes that affiliates are having. And in general, I don't think that we should build our bylaws to attack like just one particular situation. If trademark stuff happens, in a whole bunch of other states too, then I suppose that it's time to change the bylaws that way. But if it were not for trademark infringement here and us protecting our trademark, 20% seems like it might be acceptable. I just don't feel like having that be the thing that sets our bylaws is a good idea. That's it.
Let me address that. It did come up multiple times in the past. It was, I don't know if trademark specifically was threatened against Arizona, but there are letters from the chair, at least dealing with the concept of it. And we would have had, but I think it's prior to our federal registration, but there is such a thing as common law trademark. You just can't file in federal court until you register it. It's kind of like copyright, but you can sue in state court for common law trademark. So that did get mentioned in legal letters that are public now, to Arizona several times and Oregon several times. And Oregon was really pushing it, but then the other group was a PAC and not a political party, or didn't claim to be a political party. But that's not the only issue. I did not only just mention trademark, though trademark obviously is a big deal here, be it common law or federal. It's our ballot access. Some secretaries of state will say, if you've got two groups both claiming to be your party, neither of you get on the ballot. They just throw up their hands. There's several states like that. interestingly, in Michigan, that didn't happen because of a state party. It happened because there were two different competing national parties, which just makes for an interesting situation. But the Reform Party didn't get on the ballot there because who was the identity of the National Reform Party was apparently in dispute. But there are some states that are like, because they're not eager to have us on the ballot to begin with. So it's not just the trademark issues. It's that we've got to protect our valuable ballot access. Anyone further? Okay, so the amendment on the floor is to strike 10 or 10% and insert in 20%. Ms. Arrowood, Mr.
I'm sorry, could I ask a quick question?
Sure, Dr. Moulton.
So the original proposal had 10 or 10%.
Yes,
I guess maybe it's a little ambiguous to me. If someone could refresh my memory, is it whichever is lower or whichever is higher that is used?
at least,
So
whichever's lower, I think.
the lower one. Okay. So given what is the least populous state in terms of membership, and what would 20% of that be? So how would that-
Wyoming, I believe, and I'm gonna be
DC.
no. Oh, you mean I think he means of well, right.
Sustaining members, right?
Sustain number of sustaining members, I believe, is what Dr.
So I'm wondering if we multiply that number by 20%, how does that compare with the number 10?
Pretty close, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Because I mean, we can look, but the last time I looked at Wyoming, they had about 44 to 50 sustaining members in Wyoming. And they have the least amount. I mean, we can look to see if that's still the same. Let me go over to here. Let me just open a new tab because I have under documents here, we have delegate allocations. Let's see, because the national members are on here. DC, no, maybe DC had less. DC had 19, so you could be right. Things could have changed since the last time I looked. Where's Wyoming? Wyoming at 42, so it's DC. DC would be really tough with 10. I forgot about DC. And 20% in DC would be what, 4? So I was wrong. And coming close is 51 there to so I thought it was what, no, Vermont only has 29.
So just to clarify, because the proposal removes the 10 or as well, this would actually lower the requirement for some states, for the small states, and raise the requirement for big states. Is that correct?
You're the mathematician, so yeah, I think so. But math
Not
is
quite.
hard. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Roulette.
That's okay. So it would not raise, or it would not lower the requirement for anybody, because if you're in Delaware or whatever, or DC, you only need 4 people or 10 people. If you were in California, you would need 10 people or like 260, and you would just choose the 10. Getting rid of this means that California is 260, and
that was my original question, whether we choose the lower or the higher one. The chair said at least means the higher, or maybe I misunderstood.
And maybe are you sure I have your amendment right on the screen? Did you mean to keep in that 10, Mr. Roulette?
No, 10's got to go.
Okay, okay, okay. So you were confusing me with your argument. Dr.
Well, I mean, that's why I originally asked whether it was 10 or 10%, the original language, which we pick whichever is higher or whichever is lower.
In the original language, I believe it's whatever is lower.
Okay, so the original language, whichever is lower, which would be 2 people in DC. Okay, so in other words, this would raise it for I guess this wouldn't raise it for everyone. This would then well, no, yeah, this would raise it for everyone. So everyone would require more under this proposal. Thank you.
Except for maybe DC. Because
No,
it would,
but you just said that before we choose whichever is lower, and 2 people is lower than 10. So originally DC would be 2 people, and now
Right.
DC would be 4 people.
okay, yeah, you're
it
correct.
So it does
Yeah,
raise it for
yeah.
everyone.
Yeah, you're correct.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, so the amendment on the floor is to strike 10 or 10% and stick in 20. So it says at least 20%. Ms. Arrowood, if you would take a roll call, a yes vote will strike the 10 and insert 20, a no vote will leave it at the 10 or 10%.
Sorry, I'm going to say no. Bracco,
Yes.
Sazelsky,
No.
Latham,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Moulton,
Yes.
Rowlett,
Yes.
did Mr. Rufo appear?
He did not.
All right, I'll call on Dave Robertson, alternate 2.
Yes.
All right, sir. Seebeck,
No.
Madam Chair, at this point, we have 6 yes and 3 no.
I'm voting no just to make a statement, but it's going to pass.
All right.
And I'm correcting this right here. So just one moment. You had another amendment, Mr. Rowlett?
Yeah, the last one is issues of clarity. In that same sentence, I would like to decapitalize the word party and just say national party. And I understand, well, I'll give the argument for that later. That's one of them. In the same sentence, put a comma after the word state. Do you want to do this all
Yeah,
of
we
them or just one?
no, it needs to be because it's separate issues.
Okay, one at a time then.
So you want here to be national party,
Yep,
lowercase.
yep.
Would you like to speak to that?
A couple of people, at least 2, were confused by this. They said, well, do you have to be a member of the national party or does a state party count? And I understand that throughout the rest of the bylaws, the word party capitalized means the national party, and that this would make it kind of, putting a national party in lowercase would be inconsistent with the rest of the bylaws. However, enough people have gotten confused by it that I think we should just make it explicit here that we're talking about the national party and not a state party.
I don't know who had their hand raised first, but I see Dr. Moulton first, so I'm going to call Dr. Moulton and Mr. Bracco and then myself.
I would like to mirror exactly what Mr. Rowlett said up until he said the word however. Because that's a huge problem. We say party capitalized everywhere else in the bylaws. So here to have a totally different style, I think creates a lot of inconsistencies. So I oppose this amendment.
Thank you, Dr. Moulton. Mr. Bracco?
Yes, I would like to read Article 1 of the bylaws. These articles shall govern the association known as the, in quotes, Libertarian Party, hereinafter referred to as the, in quotes again, capital P Party. This is writing the bylaws for the benefit of people who don't read bylaws, and I think that that's a bad strategy, and I oppose this amendment.
Yeah, I'm not going to repeat the other points. I am going to add to them, though. Just because people can't, well, I am repeating one point. There's going to be people complain who are confused about every single word in the bylaws. They're looking at just a proposal in isolation. I don't think they would be confused with it being in the bylaws in its entirety. And you just introduced a potential ambiguity in the future. When you say something at the beginning that the word party is going to be standardized this way, you keep it standardized that way, because one of the concepts in interpreting bylaws is that every word means something. And if all of a sudden you're departing from the way it's used elsewhere, the presumption is you mean something different. And we don't mean something different. This is a huge, huge no-no in crafting bylaws. You don't do things that way. Mr. Roulette, then Mr. Seebeck.
You guys have convinced me. I'll withdraw this one if there's no objection.
Okay, I'm going to ask, is there any objection to withdrawing this amendment? Okay, hearing none. Okay, your next amendment?
Put a comma after the word state. Same sentence.
Okay, one sec. Would you care to speak to that? I know this is minor. Well, sometimes we have our most vicious fights over commas. Mr. Roulette, your rationale for that?
If you read the sentence out loud, it reads as if there should be a pause there.
In the event of a dispute within the membership of an affiliate as to the proper identity of its chair, comma, the Libertarian National Committee, comma, upon a petition of at least 20% of the members of the party, yeah, it makes sense to me. I read ahead. Residing in the appropriate state, comma, shall, okay, I get it. I agree. Anyone further? Is there any objection to that comma? Ms. Arrowood, I saw your little green light come on, so I didn't know if you were trying to talk.
No,
Okay, so seeing none, you got your comma. The comma is through. Were there any further amendments, Mr. Roulette?
Just a couple.
Okay,
All right. If you go down to the sentence that says, if the affiliate has its own judicial committee authorized to resolve such disputes,
yes,
the decision of the body, instead of the, strike the and put in that.
okay,
That is more specific than the, and it points correctly to the judicial committee instead of just, it's more clear, I think.
yep, gotcha. Did you say your argument while you were doing it, or would you like to say something further?
Yep, that was the argument.
Okay, would anyone like to speak to that? Or, you know, what I'm saying, debate or whatever? Okay, is there any objection to that change? Okay, seeing none, that one passes. Let me just clear this up while I'm doing that. If you'd like to say other amendments.
Last one. Okay, the sentence that begins, sorry, the sentence that is, the unrecognized claimants of the disputed chairmanship may appeal to the judicial committee. After the word judicial committee, insert a comma.
Okay, did you wish to speak to that?
It's two separate things.
Okay.
So there should be a comma there.
Okay, anyone else like to speak to this? Is there any objection to adding that comma? Right, seeing none, that passes. Was that the end of the amendments?
That's the end of the amendments.
Okay. So where we are at presently is this is as if we're considering it afresh. So it's kind of Schrodinger's proposal right now. It's not anywhere. It's not in the report. It's not in the yellows. So what would be appropriate motions, which can be amended, would be move to adopt this and put it right back into the report in the place that it's in. It can be to move to adopt this and put it at the end of the report, which is what some people had talked about before. It can be moved to adopt this as a yellow lined proposal. I certainly have my opinions, but I'd like to give committee members an opportunity to make their preferred motion if they like. So raise your hand if you've got a motion. If no one does, I'm going to make one. All right, I am moving to adopt this as a yellow lined proposal, which means it would be not in this report. Mr. Rolette.
Okay, I think that we should keep it where it is, and I'll briefly explain. In gambling, and especially poker, there's this theory called expected value, which means that even if you have something that's likely not to work out, if you're getting enough bang for your buck, you should still try it. That's exactly what's going on with this. Looking at the survey, only 44% of the people who responded to the survey liked this proposal in the way that it was then, with the rationale that it had then, and with people's understanding of it as it was then. I think that if we give it another rationale, maybe not one quite so nuclear as the one that I proposed, but something that's more clarifying, that it'll have a better shot. Even if it doesn't have a better shot, what this proposal is about, I mean, it's about resolving affiliate disputes, but in parentheses, for me, it's always been about preventing affiliate disputes. Having rules in place to govern these things makes it, well, A, it makes it less likely, which is my main goal overall. And B, makes it so that if it does happen, it's not quite as disastrous. And these affiliate disputes are, I think they're the most destructive things that happen to us. It's better to lose ballot access than to have one of these things blow up and, tank your state for a few decades, or not a few decades, but, these things blow you up for a good chunk of years. Given that, if you believe that this proposal passing could prevent affiliate disputes from occurring, then keeping it in the proposal, in the report, is worth the shot, even if it's only 44% likely to work out. And that's what I've got.
Thank you. Dr. Moulton.
Okay. I oppose this proposal anyway. I think it'll lead to more affiliate disputes, not less. But I realize I'm in the minority on that, so let's set all that aside. I just want to respond to the point about expected value. The general point seems to be that the upside is very high, so it's worth the risk, even if it's relatively unlikely to pass. That small chance of passing multiplied by the huge upside makes it worth the battle. I think it's important to include in the calculus that time is taken away from which other good proposals could pass. And In addition, this can potentially prejudice delegates against some of our other proposals. So if they dislike this proposal so much, it can torpedo the chances of other proposals passing, even if there is enough time to discuss them. So I would urge the committee to take this into account in the expected value consideration. I don't think it's a good idea to leave this in the report where it was before. I could support yellow line in it, which would be my preference. I could support moving it to the end of the report, which I think would be better than leaving it where it originally was. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'd like to, Mr. Latham, to go for before me, even though my hand was raised first, Mr. Latham.
Oh, I thought you were going and I was deferring to you. Almost want to echo what Dr. Moulton said. I did want to add two things, though. I don't want to overstate the opposition to this because I think that's been a little hyped. Yeah, there's been some. I don't think it's so much that it's, a huge problem. Still, I still favor moving it either to yellow or at the end of the report for just a lot of the reasons that have been stated. I also wanted to maybe just push back on the notion that an affiliate dispute necessarily compromises ballot access. Yes, I have seen that happen in some affiliates, and we go back and forth with examples. I think at the end of the day, there can be affiliate disputes, but ballot access can still go forward. And yeah, because think about it, if it were so easy to nuke ballot access because there was some kind of internal party dispute, then why wouldn't just some folks create rival Republican and Democratic parties and sabotage their ballot access that way? That's because it's really not a viable strategy to knock them off the ballot. So I just wanted to push back on that because that had been mentioned a couple times. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Now I'm going to push back on your pushback. It's because the people that make the decisions are both Democrats and Republicans, and they're the same party when it comes to that sort of thing. They're not going to pull on each other what can easily be turned around. You cannot compare the ballot access struggles of a third party with the Democrats or Republicans. It's just not even in the same ballpark. And if we want to use a current issue, now, fortunately, Michigan is not one of those states where if there's some kind of state dispute, they throw up their hands. They recognize who the national party recognizes. Not every state is that way. So I didn't say if there's a dispute in every state, it would always happen. I said in some states it could happen. And that's just an undeniable truth. If in fact this dispute in Michigan, we had a different, the way their Secretary of State operated, I don't know if any of you realize how hard ballot access is in Michigan. You'd be talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's almost as bad as New York, though not quite as bad. So that risk is just really, really high. Just wanted to bring that up there. It's not at play with whatever current issues going on now, but it can be. I know it's not as difficult, but I think Wyoming is one of those states where if there's some kind of thing, it can happen that way. And each state is so different in so many things. Like some states, you can't easily change your name. Like if you decided you wanted to go do your own thing, that gets into a whole other thing that I know more about than I ever wanted to know about. I want to now, though, get on something that the three of us agreed with. I don't think this is all cake. I don't think it's all upside, even if it doesn't win. The whole reason why even though I like the proposal in general, except for the few misgivings I gave, I think it's a good proposal. The reason why I kind of turned against it is because of the survey and just some of my experiences with some of the high passions. This convention is going to be a passionate convention, and I would like the bylaws committee not to contribute to inflaming them. And I do think the risk of that is really, really high. And I hope at a Commer convention, this proposal can be taken up. I think it's a good proposal. But we're in a balancing act of trying to keep things to a dull roar. And I think this is pouring gasoline or salt on a wound, or whatever we want to call it. That's the only reason why I want to yellow line it. It's not because I don't like the proposal. So I disagree with Dr. Moulton there, but I agree with him that I think the downside was downplayed, and I think there's a huge downside because of just the nature of this convention. Thank you. Mr. Bracco.
So am sympathetic to both sides of this. I think I agree with Mr. Ouellette that affiliate party disputes are worse than a ballot access issue. There was a point where the party had no ballot access basically anywhere, and we've built from that. But I don't like, if we had an affiliate dispute everywhere at the same time, we have insurmountable problems. So I think that I agree with that. However, you can do expected value calculations all day. What's the expected value of Russian roulette? And that is there's a risk of ruin that I think some of the other members are bringing up that I'm sympathetic to as well. I think that the best compromise is to leave this in the report, but move it to the end. And so I would ask other members to vote against this motion and then have a subsequent motion to move it to the end. Thank you.
So the subsequent motion would be to pass it and move it to the end.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not in order to make that motion right now, so I'm just talking about it.
Yeah, I'm just making clear. So the current motion is to pass it and stick it in yellow. If that fails, motions would be in order to pass it and leave it where it is, or to pass it and move it to the end. And if all of those fail, then I guess pass it and put it to red line. And if that fails, then the whole thing just fails and it doesn't go anywhere. Just wanted to make our parliamentary sense clear here. So is there anything further on the current motion, which is to pass it but yellow line it? Okay, Ms. Arrowwood, if you could please take a roll. A yes vote would pass it and move it to the yellow lines. And then we would go on to the survey. Or if it fails, if it fails, then further motions would be in order. I kind of confused myself there for a second. Ms. Arrowwood.
Right. Arrowwood, dubious, but yes. Rocco,
No.
Szalski,
I like the idea of putting it at the end, so I'm going to vote no.
Latham,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Moulton,
Yes.
Rowlett,
No.
Dave Roberson,
No.
Mike Seebeck.
Abstain.
All right. Madam Chair, at this point, we have 4 yes, 4 no, and 1 abstain.
Oh my God, I hate to do this to you, Tom, but I'm voting to yellow line it.
Okay.
So that passes. We're moving on to the motion to pass it into the yellow line reports. And now we're moving on to the survey, Dr. Moulton.
Is it okay if I add another row here so that we can rank this in the yellow lines as well?
Yes, please.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I don't know how we want to deal with the survey. I know you have data in two different formats. One was the big, huge dump. Well, it wasn't that. That just came out wrong. The more extensive data that was in the spreadsheet formula, and then there was some individual responses that had trickled in that also had comments on them. I didn't know if we just wanted to just start going through them. And it would be in order if people want to make little tweaking motions to things depending upon what the survey says, or maybe to make recommendations to the rationales committee to tweak some rationales. Whose hand was first?
I think it was mine, and it was just, I guess, a point of inquiry. I thought we were still going to maybe take a motion to move that last proposal we voted on to the end of the report to perhaps assess there might be slightly more support for that option as opposed to moving it to yellow.
This wasn't a fill in the blanks motion. I think I pretty clearly explained that if it passes, we were moving on. That
Okay, good. That answers my question.
Okay. All right. Now remember, someone who voted on the winning side, if they really wanted to see it at the end, can move to reconsider. I'm not going to, but just saying. Or there could be somebody that has a different yellow lined one in mind that might now want to move that to the report since we got rid of one. But I know Dr. Moulton's view is we should keep it as short as possible. So what I'm going to do is I want to pull up my folder with the Survey Monkey stuff in it. And the second one hasn't gone out yet. I've just been insanely busy, but I don't know if you could see my tabs. I did have I have Survey Monkey up right here where I'm building the second one. I just haven't had a chance to do it yet. So let's go here to bylaws. So, how did we want to handle this? I see the hands. What we're going to do first is I'm going to pull up the charts, which I had promised you guys that I would pull into one thing. I did send it to you. I don't know if anyone wants to go through this. Just wanted to explain if it wasn't obvious. I did put a title up at the top here. The first chart is all answers combined, whether they were delegates, claimed delegates or not. It sticks with bylaws proposal 1 and then pulls out claimed delegates and then not claimed delegates. And then it goes on to proposal 2 and does the same thing. So if anyone, wants to refer to that, we always can. But then we also have the survey chart, which is most extensive, that I think, maybe we should go through, or if people have gone through independently and want to make some motions to clarify things. And then there's that second batch I gave you guys, which was the individual responses with names, with personally identifying information redacted. Who was first between Dr. Moulton and Mr. Bracco?
I will defer.
Dr. Moulton?
Yeah, I added a line to the yellow line spreadsheet for resolve affiliate disputes. I would ask the people who have filled out their rankings before to add a ranking for that. I also wanted to respond briefly. The chair said that I wanted to make the report as short as possible. I don't think that's a correct characterization. I thought that the number of proposals that we had in the report before was the sweet spot. So now that we've moved this one to yellow line, I think we can add either one contentious proposal or two simple proposals. And I think we would have time for that. So I would favor moving one or two of the yellow line proposals into the report. And I would suggest that we figure out the ordering that people have of the yellow lines and then perhaps make some motions to that effect.
Rather than going through the survey report?
I think we should go through the survey report, but I think independently, people could update the rankings as we're doing that. And then by
Okay.
the time you're through, then maybe we can come to a conclusion.
Okay, so what I'm going to do then, and Mr. Latham,
Yeah, I'm trying to I'm on the spreadsheet and I can't figure out how to add my name to a row and put numbers in. So
you
Need-
probably don't, did you request permission?
no, how do I do that?
Somebody who's done that, can you,
Put it in the chat or something?
because since I own it, I don't know what it looks like, but everyone else
Okay.
had requested.
Madam Chair, I can answer that.
Go ahead.
These if you see on there where it says view, then the green button.
Yep.
Click on that and it'll give you a drop down to say request edit.
I don't get that when I click. I get show, a bunch of grade stuff, and zoom or full screen.
Who's editing right now?
Yeah, somebody's editing right now.
And they're doing it
Putting
in
my
front
numbers in.
Not me.
Oh, yeah, and then it went away. I tell you what, while I have my hand up, because I actually think this is survey related. It came to me actually in the conversation about restructuring. Actually had a fair amount of pushback too in the survey. I think we ought to acknowledge that. And so strategically, it made me wonder about, putting a separate cumulative voting proposal in the report. And I know we've talked about that, and maybe it's anyway. I think we ought to just revisit that issue, or address how to deal with it. Maybe that doesn't even happen now, but that came to my mind. Would hate to have the restructuring proposal go down and also just lose the potential proportionality of that large members that proposal has.
Okay, right now we're gonna go to, because that would have to be noticed for another meeting if we're gonna do that. But I do want to tell everybody, we're a month away. So please keep that in mind. And the more changes we do, I'm expecting that you're not you particularly, Mr. Latham, whoever the you is going to be the first to volunteer to stick these reports into binders. Mr. Bracco.
So a couple of things. If I understand correctly what we're doing now, we are going to start discussing ranking the yellow line section of the, I don't know if I want to say report, but our proposals.
I think actually we were going to look at the survey for the first 6 proposals. One of them has now been yellow lined, so it's 5 of the proposals to see if there's changes we need to make to them. I think we're kind of like just brushing off this survey, and I think we need to do something with this data now, because I'm going to be doing a second survey and we're going to be overwhelmed. So before we even get to the yellow lines, I think we got to worry about our actual report. And
Okay.
that's what the survey has to do with. And that's
Mm.
how I had it on the agenda. It was the next agenda item to talk about yellow line stuff.
Okay. I will wait until then.
Okay. So I don't know, this is the way I think we should do it. First is bylaws proposal, one, which is, one second here, because I know for the next time people wanted me to put titles and stuff on there. Bylaws proposal one was standardized committee rules. So I think we should go down this column. Support standardized, and whoa, didn't mean to do that. I wanted to put the title here while we were going so we'd remember what it was. And see if there's anything here that's useful to us. A lot of these comments, I don't want to say a lot because I don't want to denigrate any members that took the time to comment. But when someone like, I mean, he sees no reason to object. But when it's obviously people who are super, super new and just aren't getting it, I don't think those are really the most valuable of them. I see your share request. Let me. Oh, I can't do, I don't want to do this. Rob, let me stop my share because otherwise it's going to share on our video everyone's email addresses and I don't want to do that. So let me. Okay, you should have permission now and I can go back and get back to this screen. One moment. Okay, so going down, I'm going to go through. Quickly, and you guys stop when you think there's something that we might want to do something with. So the new to the procedures, the current platform procedures are a bit too convoluted and complicated to begin with. I don't think they really are, and it's more complicated and convoluted to have two different ones. But if someone, I'm just going to start going through these. Stop me if there's something you want to do something with. Anything that says if time permits is vague and might as well be removed. Okay. Even with a master's degree, both are confusing. Standardize is good. Yeah, I think this is majoring on the minors before bringing the matter to a vote. It's still pretty bulky. Simplicity is always better. Okay, that got into platform tokens, which wasn't really part of this. It was more the committee procedures. A lot of, I don't want to say a lot, but there seemed to be quite a few comments that in standardizing the time, they would rather the higher time be chosen rather than the lower time. We went with standardizing with the lower time. So I think one was, someone can go and look, one was like 7 minutes and one was 10 minutes or something like that. And we went with the lower time for both. I think that I think what people, well, we can look at it, but just understand that it seems like a lot of the comments are wishing us to standardize it upward rather than standardize it lower. as many proposals as possible and not limited by removing the ability to hear them is kind of limited by the fact that we're only at convention for a certain amount of time.
Yeah, that one seems to be a comment almost effectively in favor of reduce the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and here it doesn't remove, this actually grants more rights to a minority report, so I don't get that comment. Now this one here is where I think it's somebody who hasn't been at a lot of conventions. In the past, 1 second, Wayne, I think Skippy wants up. That barking is really, really distracting. We have a blind dog who can't go up the steps, so he barks at the bottom when he wants a ride. Here where it says striking the option for the convention to hear proposals that don't pass the committee makes this a no. That kind of, to me, I've always thought that was a weird thing to have in the standard agenda, because the whole point of a committee is to hear the considered opinion of the committee. But in my time in the party, we've never, ever, ever gotten to that. So it's ephemeral, but just so you know that this one person who's not going to convention didn't like that. This person just doesn't like rules. Same thing here, where they don't like that it's striking something we never get to anyway. And that's kind of dealt with in the notice provisions proposal. Let's see here.
The one on row 79 might be worth looking
Okay,
at.
I don't understand it. I don't, I can't discuss it because I have no idea
Yeah.
what he's.
I just didn't want you to scroll past it so fast because I was like, what's going on here?
Well, let's look at the proposal. He talked about 5.6. Yeah, this is all the thing about receiving an unfavorable vote. If you want to talk about wasting floor time, if someone feels so passionately about something that receives an unfavorable vote, they need to move to suspend the rules. That defeats the whole purpose of a committee, but we never get to this anyway. And I think that perhaps that needs to be stressed in the rationale. So let's look at the rationale here, because we've now seen like 5 comments about that. So this might be something to refer. Yeah, I think perhaps we need to add into the rationales why we're striking that. If anyone who's been here longer than me, do you remember us ever getting through all of the platform and bylaws proposals and getting to ones in which the committee voted down? Mr. Seebeck?
I think it happened once in 2010, and that was about it.
We could go look at those minutes, but I mean,
I'm just
I
saying
could
I
be
have
wrong,
no
but
memory.
it very, very rarely happens, if at all.
Mr. Latham, you were about to say something?
Oh, I just shared that I have no memory, but there's a lot of things I have no memory of.
Yeah, we could look at those minutes, but Ms. Arrowood?
I was just going to say that getting through all the platform and all the bylaws sounds like a pipe dream to me.
Since I've been around, we haven't. So, but I think we should refer to the rationales committee to add something about that they're not losing something that they've gotten. It just doesn't happen in the bio. And the rationales committee might want to look at the 2010 minutes to see if it did in fact happen in 2010. And if not, say to anyone's memory, this hasn't happened, and if it has, it's been so extremely rare that we shouldn't clutter our rules with it, and members always have a right to suspend the rules to bring, and that includes committee members, to bring forward things that didn't make it out of committee. So that's something I think for the rationales committee to take a look at. Okay. This is talking about bylaws, ambush. Again, we're dealing with that with the notice requirements. I think a lot of these objections about hearing things that might be popular with the membership, but didn't make it out of committee because committees, you know, are selected by a much smaller group. I think perhaps that might even be in rationales, that a later proposal will deal with giving members greater automatic rights to hear proposals that have popular support. And here's someone else again that this is an inadvertent support for our notice requirements that I would agree with. See, signature tokens, where in here does it mention signature tokens? I know it mentions platform tokens. I think they got confused. It does say signature tokens. I never noticed that. See, a lot of these persons are dealing with language we're not touching, and that's not really our issue here. But I think I know why it says that, is you do have to sign your platform tokens. But that is weird. That is weird language. I agree with him, and I never noticed it before, but that's not part of our proposal. Yep, I think this person got it. Oh no, it actually says randomly. No, he doesn't get it. It doesn't, it does change actual rules. Seems reasonable. Why were the bylaws written this way? That is always a very good question. What issues were they trying to fix or prevent? I don't know. I can guess, but I don't know. It says this requires an additional definite article. The Bylaws and Rules Committee and Platform Committee. I don't think it needs another definite article. What do you guys think?
No. No.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, you don't include Roberts. The whole purpose of standing convention rules is to supersede Roberts. I am generally concerned about changes to the platform. That has nothing to do with this. Changes to the platform might happen, my dude. Show up at convention and don't vote. Time limits can stifle free discussion. Well, we can't have a 2-week-long convention. Each delegate should only have one vote on any issue. They do only have one vote on any. Oh, I think it's talking about the signature tokens, which wasn't part of this proposal. That is what happens. Okay. Yeah, this person said and everything. I don't care about this. Take me to the platform proposals.
Might I make a suggestion for the second survey of an additional
Yes.
question?
Yes.
How many Libertarian Party national conventions have you been to in the past? Like 0 through, I guess, all of them, theoretically. But I think that could be valuable context.
I mean, I can. let me just say like this, the rest of the committee agree, because some of it's going to be, if I remember, because I have to be honest with you, I'm structuring this next one by copying the first one and just changing the titles.
I don't think it's a big deal, but I would take a lot more seriously a well-written critique by somebody who's been to 10 conventions
Yeah.
than somebody who's been to 0 who's just like, I don't even know what's going on. Just being honest.
Yeah, I'm kind of like, they're really hung up on the tokens here when that isn't. What's he talking about? Debate period should be 30 minutes. Can you imagine having a debate? So yeah, it's like, what? Okay.
I think he's talking about total period for something that could happen rather than, whatever.
You could save more time if you just asked everyone to mail in their comments. Debate by mail first. Some don't approve of reducing the time from 15 to 10. 15 is so long to have discussion without amendment. Okay. There was quite a few favorable ones. I don't, the markup is incorrect. 7 needs to be changed to 6. Okay, I'll take a look at that. That very well could be correct because the automatic numbering. 7 needs to be changed to 6. Oh yeah, he's right. But automatic renumbering, but doesn't matter. But let me I will fix that in our report. Let me highlight that. Those things like that I want to make sure I take care of. Okay, it seems like and again, this was one of the easier ones we picked. I don't really see anything we need to do except for me fixing the markup. Y'all interrupt me because again, I'm kind of flying through these. Bylaws proposal 2, rising second. So let me change. Okay, there were, if I remember correctly, quite a few that wanted to lower the number to 10. If it would make it pass, I have no problem with lowering the number. I think 20 though is the best number, but maybe that's something the committee wants to consider. There were some suggestions to make it a percentage. We roundly voted that down in committee for all the reasons we did then. Yeah, like, you want to know something? The longer I'm in the LP, the more I'm just like, libertarians don't want to get anything done. There should be no bar to bring something up. That's probably someone who hasn't been to a lot of conventions. Here they want a percentage. Yes, 20 is arbitrary. A lot of things in life are arbitrary. But again, they're suggesting 5 to 10. 10 seems to be something that a lot of people are saying, look, we've got 4 comments right here to 10. If y'all want to consider that, it seems like it might pass easier. Let's take less time and actually get through the agenda before they turn the lights out on us. Before Ken Molman has to get out the bullhorn. See, also here, 20 seems over the top. I don't think, and I do see your hand, Mr. Latham, I'll call upon you. I think perhaps in the rationale, let me see what we stuck in the rationale. It just says in large bodies. I think maybe we should say that in bodies potentially of over 1,000 people. I think the 20 starts to look a lot more reasonable when you compare it to 1,000, rather than just saying large. So maybe that is something for us to consider. Mr. Latham.
Yeah, I just recall during our discussion, and maybe I'm conflating 2 discussions, but it was kind of on the dues number as well. Like we talked about maybe starting with 20, knowing that people might want to negotiate on the floor that down to 10.
Yeah.
So I still like keeping it at 20.
I
And
like
then if
keeping
there-
it at 22, but just wanted to bring it up that that seems like a theme. No, because you may need to have it in writing. That's already in our rules. That if something's convoluted, they have to give the motion in writing to the secretary before it's even put out there. We should follow Roberts to maintain a motion in a second. Okay. 1 second. I'm sorry, I skipped past here. I worry about confusion at the already crowded microphones. You don't have to be at a microphone to second, so I think this person's just confused. Again, people really worrying about that 20.
I saw somebody. Yeah, there you go. That one. Need to know the total number of delegates. Yeah.
For a quorum. That is an
Mhm.
interesting question as well. Our quorum is 40%. So let's say we had let's use the round number of 1,000. It's still 20 out of 400 people. Dr. Moulton?
Yeah, just two things. First of all, you said a few times the rationale committee should look at this or that. Are you writing those down, or are the secretary? Or are
I'm
we supposed to
hoping the
remember them?
secretary is writing them down.
Okay. Is the secretary writing? May I ask the secretary?
Yes,
Okay, perfect. Okay, the second thing is, I'm concerned about our time management, this meeting. We all received this information and hopefully we all
Okay.
read it. So I'm not sure why we're reading it as a group. If we have a lot of extra time, that's fine. But my concern is I know our report needs to be finalized relatively soon. So I would move that we table this to take up the matter of moving one of the
Okay.
yellow proposals into our report, because it seems everyone who wants to has filled out the ordering and there seem to be some clear winners.
And I'm fine with that too, Dr. Moulton. I'm also fine with saying the committee chairs provided you guys the info. Look at it. And if you see some kind of pattern that makes you want to make a motion to amend one of our proposals, say it on the list and we can hash it out.
I'm just to clarify, I'm fine with continuing to read that stuff, but I see it's, well, from my perspective, it's 9:45. I don't know what time
Okay.
it is, but we have like 15 minutes left in the meeting. I would like to spend some of that time moving one of our yellow proposals into the report so we can get our report
Okay.
at least more finalized, and then we could circle back to this and keep reading this stuff. But so I move that we table this so that we can take that up. Could I have that motion heard, I guess?
Yes. Well, I'm gonna ask, is there any objection, everyone? I mean, so Dr. Moulton's basically saying is you guys have this information. And we're on very limited time. There's gonna be multiple surveys. We're not gonna be able to do all this with. He didn't say that. I'm adding that. And let's take a look at the yellows to see if there's some kind of consensus to moving one, I think the way Dr. Moulton said it earlier, one spicier one or a couple non-spicy ones to the main report.
Yeah, once we're on that agenda, let me know and I'd like to speak
Okay.
to it.
Yeah, let me go here. Was that you with the winner?
That was me with the winner. So from my perspective, at least, we took a very spicy proposal off our agenda, or out of our report, and now we have room for either another spicy proposal or some non-spicy proposals. And yeah, someone else just put non-spicy. So yeah, that was kind of my thinking, that it seems pretty clear if there's just one, people feel the appeal LNC decisions, which I'm certainly fine with. That will probably be a relatively controversial proposal. At least there will probably be debate on that. I think these other two, the non-spicy, are more slam dunks. So I think we could get through 2 non-spicy or 1 spicy. And I'm open to either one, but I think we should do one of those 2 things.
Hey, Mr. Seebeck?
Yeah, question of information. We had a proposal that was gonna create more time for the committees to do their work. What proposal was that and what became of it?
Oh, it's in our
I know
report.
we passed it, but it got moved somewhere.
It is.
I think it's the second one.
Yes, the second one is rising seconds. It's proposal 3.
Was that in the, was
Survey?
that was that in that list? Excuse me.
What list? The survey?
The rankings.
No, because
Nope,
this is
'cause
in
it's
our
in the
report
report.
already.
Oh, it's in the report. Never mind.
Yeah,
Never
it's
mind.
proposal 3.
That-
Anything that's been
I-
changed to a
I was confused.
number, yeah. And so let's go, so the
Okay,
yellows are
for some
the,
reason, I thought these were the ones we were looking at, and they go in the report, not what's already in there. I apologize.
okay, I'm gonna put my hand up after Mr. Bracco. Mr. Bracco?
So I would like to speak in favor of doing the 2 non-spicy. We have a lot of spicy in the report already. We're still, like, even taking one out, we still got a lot of spicy in the report. I think we need some slam dunks. I think these 2 are easy. And I think that, I think these are going to be slam dunks, probably close to the level that that the proposal that Mr. Seebeck was just talking about is. Like, I would hope that there's very little discussion. We just do it and move on. I think we need a little bit more calm in the proposal. Thanks.
Okay, I used to do this on the past, not the past LNC, but the LNC before, and they used to drum crazy. I'd be like, I have a hybrid thought. I actually don't think the resignation one is necessarily non-spicy. It is, but even in this committee, we had some interesting debate that I actually think can rabbit trail us. In an ideal world, it's non-spicy. I actually would like to, I think the appeal LNC decision ones is not that spicy. I think it's going to have the side eye support that we talked about before. I will, my support is for moving that into the report and putting it at the end because it protects everybody and it's going to get the side eye vote. The one I think is completely bland, like mayonnaise, is the limit committee alternates. That one's like an absolute no-brainer. And I could tell you what I'm in favor of is passing the appeal LNC decisions at the very end and actually doing that limit committee alternates and potentially moving it up to number 2 to start everyone out real calmly. Because or even number 1, like, because that one is as bland gets. But the resignation ones, people are going to be like, yeah, but what if it's, I don't know. I just remember we had some discussion, I have a question for JJ, by the way. JJ, are you still here?
Yes, I'm still here.
The resignation ones was that they be effective immediately and wouldn't require a vote. Can't that just be done in the policy manual?
Um,
Now that I think about it,
yeah, it probably, yeah, that's a rule in the nature of a rule of order. So yeah, that would probably be all that you'd need to do.
I might just move that on the LNC as a policy manual amendment. And get it in our policy manual, and then if that's possible, I mean, I'll move that shit tomorrow.
Yeah, it's
Point
it's
of
a rule in
order,
the nature
point
of
of
a rule order.
information on that.
Yes, well, okay, well, is it interrupting point of information, or do you actually have a point of order because there was other people in line?
It's an interrupting point of information regarding this.
Okay,
The proposal as written isn't just the LNC. It applies to all committees.
I don't
I
think
bel-
so.
Can we confirm that?
Hold on. I don't know where I was at now.
All it says, resignations shall be effective once tendered.
Yeah,
It's
but what
adding
section is it in?
Article 6 officers and Article 7
Yeah.
National Committee.
Yeah, it's just for the LNC.
Okay, thank you.
So with that in mind, let me go back here. I do think that can just be a policy manual thing. And that then can be moved by us this term. It can be moved at any time. So I'm advocating for adding 2. I'm advocating for adding 8, which is actually the real one, because I think number 3 is going to be an absolute no-brainer in which the question will be called like quickly. Mr. Latham. When I say 3 and 8, I'm doing the line numbers on the chart there.
So just to explain my rankings, I actually am not a big fan of proposal 00, although I certainly try to work in good faith to make it the best proposal it could be. I just, in terms of seriousness, importance, that's why I ranked it as high as I did. And so that's why I don't mind it being, at the bottom of the report. And then as to proposal N, I just don't like it moving it so high, because I think it's going to bump up, or it's going to bump down, proposals we all thought were more important than this, and moving it to yellow. So I'm just concerned some that I am big fans of are kind of what I would consider on the bubble. By the way, that's the other reason I ranked appeal LNC decisions so high, is because I don't think we'll actually get to it. So I would ask that we not elevate someone from yellow very high in the report, because it's going to potentially sabotage some things we all ranked higher earlier.
Gotcha. Mr.
Bracco's
Jack-
next.
Oh, Bracco's next. Okay, thank you.
So let's see how non-spicy this thing is. I move that we take proposal N and make it ranked number 6 in the report. And I would like to speak to that.
Go ahead.
The proposal that we just took out was number 6. It was a spicy one. I agree that we shouldn't put it any higher, because we had a very thoroughly thought out ordering, certainly for this first 5, and I think the first 6, at least in our initial take. We had the standardization of committee language, because that would give us some benefit if there were minority reports. This committee would become automatic minority reports. Like, we would be operating under those rules for the rest of the report. The second one was the rising seconds, because that helps the entire convention move more smoothly. The third one was our slam dunk. That was the committee timing. And then we got into some spicy. That was the I believe that was the trial, basically, for removals. And then the fifth one was the LNC restructure. I think this one's a slam dunk. I think this one should be number 6, because no matter how the LNC restructuring one goes, it's going to be an intense one. Let's put an easy one after it. Let's give everyone a break. That's why I think this should go as number 6. It also has the benefit of leaving the rest of the report from 7 on down unchanged. We're just taking one out and putting one in. Everything else stays in the same order. Thank you.
Okay, so that is a motion. I'm gonna take my hand down. Would anyone like to speak to that motion? Dr. Moulton.
Yeah, I think this is generally a good approach. So we don't need to renumber other things that people may have already seen the numbers of. So I think taking out the resolve affiliate disputes and just replacing it with a slam dunk thing, I think is a pretty good approach. And I'm not really sure I agree that appeal LNC decisions won't be spicy, by which I mean controversial. I think it will get a lot of debate, but I'm fine with I mean, resolve affiliate disputes was just so controversial that I am comfortable with replacing it with two proposals. So even if one of them is non-spicy and the other is a little bit spicy, I think that's fine. So yeah, I'll vote in favor of this.
Hey, I don't know who was first, Mr. Roulette or Mr. Seebeck.
Roulette was.
Mr. Roulette?
I do not think that we should move it up into spot number 6. I think we should move it instead to the end of the report. For I think 4 reasons, but I'll just stick to this. First, we ought to have a little bit of humility about our ability to predict which of these proposals will eat time and which of these will not. Like the reason you want things to not be spicy mostly is so that you can get through them more quickly, I suppose. But you don't always have, like, just thinking back to all kinds of conventions in the past, the only indicator of whether or not a proposal will eat a ton of time that is consistent is how high up it is in the proposal. For that reason, the proposals that you want to have eat up time, the proposals that you want to have constructive debate about, are the ones that are most important, are the ones that most deserve the time, attention, and wisdom of the delegates at the convention. And so to put this up all the way at number 16 because it's a slam dunk, it's a slam dunk because it's not important. The other reason to not do it, one other reason to not do it, is that this is about committees. And if you look at the report as a whole, we do have kind of a section dealing with committee stuff. Like we have 3 proposals in a row, I believe, that are all about the internal workings of subcommittees. Putting this here would be at least a little weird. And people, especially people new to the convention, might think, okay, which committee are we talking about here? Are we talking about the national committee? Are we talking about some other kind of committee? Are we talking about, it does not make thematic sense. What we think might be a break from controversy might actually not be a break from controversy. And if we do this, we push down everything else that we push down everything else that does deserve more time. And so I think instead of having this replace number 6, we ought to instead just move everything up 1 and put the most important one, or the one that people think is the most important, at the end of the report instead, if we're going to do that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Excuse me. I'm still a bit congested. Mr. Seebeck?
Yeah, I was gonna speak back to something else before the motion was made, so I really can't talk about that. But I have to ask I have 4 after the hour, so I'm going to request orders of the day.
So, we are gonna go then right to a vote on this, if there's not a motion to extend time. Hearing no motion to extend time. Well, actually, I am going to make a motion to extend time because I want to make another motion. I'm moving to extend time for 10 minutes. Is there any objection to extending time for 10 minutes? Please say it out loud if you have an objection, because I don't know what people's hands are for. Hearing none. Mr. Bracco, were you seeking to speak, or are we ready for a vote on your motion?
I'm seeking to speak, but I am going to try to keep it brief.
Okay, go ahead.
So in our current ordering, proposal 7 is the raising of the dues. And that one's at least going to be jalapeno spicy. It might not be ghost pepper spicy. I think we need a break. I think we need a break in between.
We need some milk.
Yeah, we need a little bit of milk in between those two, between restructure LNC and raise dues. So that I think that's just wanted to point that out to everyone as well.
Okay, so I have my hand up because I want to make a motion when we're done with this vote. What we are voting on at this moment is to elevate proposal N and put it in where proposal 6, which is now back to EE, resided before. So I don't have to renumber other stuff in the report. A yes vote will do that. A no vote keeps it just in yellow. And then there could be further motions. Ms. Arrowwood, if you could take a roll.
Right.
But point of information.
Yes.
Just to clarify, are we only voting on proposal N, or was something added at the end of the report too? Are we only inserting one thing?
We're
Maybe I
only inserting one
misunderstood.
thing. That was the
Okay.
only motion.
Okay, thank you.
Arrowwood, yes. Rocco,
Yes.
Szelski,
Yes.
Latham,
No.
Martin,
Yes.
Moulton,
Yes.
Rowlett,
Nope.
Dave Roberson,
Yes.
Mike Seebeck.
No.
All right. 6. Madam Chair, at this point, we have 6 yes, 3 no.
I will not be voting. That passes. So that will go into number 6. The motion I wish to make is to take appeal LNC decisions and stick it on the end, which is something I did give notice of last time that I intended upon doing, but now that we're here and it was a spicy winter, and if we don't get to it, we don't get to it. So I spoke to it, I think, a lot last time. I think we all need this protection, and it wins the side I vote, in my opinion. I actually think it'll pass if we get to it. That's all I wish to say on it. I don't see any further hands, so we will go to a vote on this. It
I
is
have a question. Would that be 7 then?
no, go at the end.
Yeah, okay.
I think we had 15 or 16, whatever is.
Oh, boy.
We had 15, this would be 16.
It would be 16.
It would be. Oh, thank you. Arrowwood, I'm going to say yes. Rocco,
Yes.
Szelski,
Yes.
Latham,
Yes.
Frank Martin,
Yes.
Moulton,
Yes.
Rowlett,
Yes.
Dave Roberson,
Yes.
Mike Seebeck.
Yes.
Madam Chair, we have 9 yes at this
Okay.
point.
That then let it be done. Okay, so we will be adjourning in a few moments. Please put in the minutes, Ms. Arrowwood, then that the rationales committee will need to come up with good rationales for what will now be 6 and what will now be 16. and I'll modify the reports accordingly. I am in the middle of getting the second survey out. I would suggest if anyone in looking at least the first 6 survey results has any amendments they wish to make, perhaps we can handle those by email ballot. Because we have debated a lot of these to death, and we can move forward to getting to approving a final report. I think it might not be a bad idea to start to set a target date for that. We're not going to make the printing deadline that the LNC set. So we are going to be sticking things in binders. So I hope anyone who's going to be at the convention early will help volunteer for that. I'm going to be roping Wayne into it. We're going to have a cool volunteer suite where maybe we could all get drunk and stick things in binders. Doesn't that sound like fun? Either that or we go protest the Fed building, one or the other. So
Can
Mr.
we do both at the same time?
Yeah, maybe we'll bring the binders to the Fed building. Mr. Bracco and then Dr. Moulton.
Just a point of information. Our next meeting is April the 25th.
Yes. So I think we can do, if people in looking at these surveys see some minor tweaks we need to make, or even suggestions to the rationales committee, hey, people seem a little confused on this, maybe you want to stick in a sentence. Let's try over these next 2 weeks to do some easy stuff over emails. I don't like those big, I never was a big debater over email, but we're at a point now, we have a report. Anything that's left is tweaks. Not suggesting anyone do this, but like, for instance, if someone thinks we need to change the rising seconds from 20 to 10, make an email motion. Like, let's just dispose of the easy stuff that way. Because then we'll be almost done. I think we all will be relieved to have our Thursdays free as we get closer to convention. Dr. Moulton.
What is the deadline? Why can't we make the deadline?
It's the 20th.
Well, why can't we bang out some rationales for these
Because
two
we're
proposals?
not even going to have all
submit
of our surveys out by then.
Yeah, but isn't it a lot easier to give out addendums if we change things than to assume everything's going to be new? I mean, even if we change things, it's going to be very little. I think we could save significant work by making the deadline.
Well, the platform committee's already not going to, so there's going to be people sticking things in binders. And
Sure, but it also would save significant costs to the party, right? If instead of needing to print, I don't know how many pages this is, like if we could print, I don't know, 20 pages well in advance, and then only 1 or 2 page addendum, isn't that cheaper than printing the entire 20 or 30 pages as an addendum?
I don't think we're speaking. These are binders. So it's the only way it would be more expensive is if we're really going to the last minute and we have to pay a premium for speed. But as long as we're a couple weeks out, I don't think there's a cost difference. The difference is
okay. So the deadline is not about cost. It's only about who puts stuff in the binders. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, I misunderstood. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, it isn't an ACO binder thing. It's a 3-ring binder from what I understand. Mr. Seebeck?
Yeah, just for Mr. Moulton, Dr. Moulton's sake, we already had this discussion on the platform side. It's simplest to go digital, but there is institutional resistance to doing so. So here we are.
I mean, I completely disagree with that. Every time we've tried to go only digital, there's been significant pushback, which has led to potentially things failing that could have passed. So I don't think
I haven't seen it in the last 4
just
conventions.
No, we're not going to have crosstalk. So Dr. Moulton and then Mr. Seebeck can respond.
well, I there's a saying that Dr. Lark has that I think is appropriate, which Dr. Lark said something like, my favorite food is strawberries, but when I go fishing, I use worms. So I don't think we should assume that our preferences are the same as everyone else's. And there are certainly those who like to have printed materials in front of them, even though we might be fine with just digital. Anyway, I don't want to belabor the point. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Seebeck, you wanted to respond?
I would just argue that we're not in the days of the printing press. We are in a digital world. If we ever want to get our butts into digital voting, electronic voting, and so on, then we need to make the steps to do so. And this is one of those steps. But again, that has been shot down. But I will continue to advocate for it because let's face it, it costs time, it costs money. We could accomplish this a lot simpler with a postcard and a couple of QC codes and hyperlinks, but we're not doing that either. I've said my piece.
I am going to respond to this because it is not institutional inertia. I understand there's strong opinions on this, but I'm going to say if someone has strong opinions on this, we put out a call for convention committee volunteers. And I'm really at the point, this isn't to Mr. Seebeck, it's in general, where every single decision of the Convention Oversight Committee is getting nitpicked. Volunteer for it next time. I can tell you I probably will never serve again on a National Convention Oversight Committee with the way, but it is not institutional inertia. It is 3-foot thick cement walls and people not being able maybe to get internet. And that is not fair to our delegates to tell them to look at something electronically and then they can't because of a known problem in the building. It is not institutional inertia. That's just not correct.
Actually, no, that is institutional inertia because we're still stuck on a model which puts us in those types of buildings in the first place. And the reality of it also is that
Can we, I'm going to ask.
But I've given feedback to the Convention Oversight Committee for the past 3 conventions,
okay,
and I've been
order.
ignored.
No, we're not arguing about Convention Oversight Committee decisions here. We've done this enough. This is the Bylaws Committee. It's starting to get into Star Child trying to tell the LNC, you guys need to do this and this. And I had to say on Platform Committee, it's not our job. Our job is to put out a report. It's the Convention Oversight Committee job to execute the convention. It's not our job. There's contact form on the, well, actually contact form's not working right now. I could put on the Bylaws Committee list a complete list of all the LNC members or COC members or whatever, and I would suggest people write their comments to them. It's not appropriate for this committee.
They've been written and ignored.
So is there anything further before we're at our time? Before we adjourn, we could hang out for a few minutes afterwards if you wish. I'm sorry, Dr. Moulton.
Just super quickly, I want to point out again, I wasn't opposed to going through these comments together. I just thought that it was most important to get our report finalized by getting those yellows moved. So if people want to do that after the meeting or want to have another meeting to do that, I'm not opposed to that.
Yeah, it would be kind of interesting maybe to do a little bit of that after this meeting, to do it a little informally. There are going to be a couple more surveys. Okay, we are adjourned at 9:19 Mountain. Of course, everyone's free to leave, but anyone who wishes, I'm going to stick up those comments. If anyone wants to talk about them, let's hang out. So let me stop the recording. I am leaving for Texas tomorrow morning, so this is another one of those nights where I do still have to pack somewhat. Hold on, I can't find them.
And I just came back from Texas, by the way, so I'm gonna leave this early. I had 9 hours of driving today.